Trigger warning. Ken Urker's baby mama released a new memoir, and once again, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is trying to downplay her role in her mother's schmurder. As many of you know, Gypsy was no child. She was in her early 20s when she conspired with her now ex-boyfriend, Nicholas, to have her mother offed. She was found guilty of second-degree schmurder and served close to a decade behind bars. Poor Nicholas, though, got a life sentence. Wah, wah. And yes, she was subjected to awfulness while growing up. Her mother was not all there. They used to call it Munchausen by proxy, but now I think it has a different name. I looked it up. It's now referred to as fictitious disorder imposed on self. Okay. Meaning they faked illnesses on Gypsy Rose and she wasn't sick. There was nothing wrong with her. Her mom subjected her to so much unnecessary awfulness. And Gypsy recalls that she met Nicholas back in 2012 on a Christian dating site. And even though they met on this religious platform, their communications soon turned sexual. Gypsy writes about how quickly Nick allegedly introduced her to a world of sexually perverse things. What are we talking about here? Oh, she lets us know. Gypsy writes, Nick exposed me to a lot of sexually perverse things and ideas, but 10 years later, knowing now what I know about sex, he taught me all wrong. From what I've read, he didn't have an accurate idea of BDSM, and he made it up as we went along. And this is where she alleges that he started to get real dangerous. Gypsy claims that Nick would threaten he would toss her away if she didn't do what he said to do sexually. Quote, the more he praised me for a good job after sucking on a dildo he had ordered from Japan, the more I believe he loved me. Of course, when I would do the videos wrong, e.g., forgetting to call him master or not being a dirty enough girl, he'd threaten to pull that love away. But the most disturbing part of their relationship, Gypsy writes, was Nick's fantasies. Such as, he claimed that he lived amongst 12 alien soulmates of different species. Most notable of the characters in his fictitious universe, per her account, was a 3,000-year-old vampire named Victor, who Nick claimed to Gypsy Rose had a thirst for rhymes with grape and rhymes with hoarder. R-A-P-E and M-U-R-D-E-R. Okay. And you add that plus a lot of other unique sexual requests that she claims he would make of her, such as demands that she rub peanut butter or barbecue sauce on her girls and act out unusual sexual behaviors with phallic objects. And remember, this was all during the courtship. They had yet to even meet in person. When they did finally met, she was very happy, and things started to move along quite quickly. They started discussing the possibility of living together in his home state of Wisconsin. And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, they're toying with the idea of offing Dee Dee, her mother, to remain together. True love. Gypsy writes, We felt like our relationship was on the brink of collapse. We believed we'd tried everything to be together, and now it was a matter of taking extreme measures. Clarifying how these conversations came up, Gypsy writes that they were gradual and had been baked into an elaborate fantasy world involving Victor, the vampire, and other made-up characters created by Nick. And even creepier than that was her assertion that he apparently got aroused when topics like RAPE and MURDER came up. He would come up too. Oh God, sorry. Gypsy writes, it wasn't one discussion like, oh, how do we get rid of your mom? They were gradual conversations that were baked into an elaborate fantasy world Nick created. He shared with me that he got sexually aroused when he fantasized about murdering and then raping his ex-girlfriend, but our plot was more reminiscent of a soap opera. And then she made her move. Gypsy says, then I made this suggestion of murder, to which Nick said, Victor can do it, but you need to be the one to beg him. In the end, they agreed on a contract in which Nick, Victor the vampire, would off Dee Dee and then sexually assault Gypsy Rose. Trying to make sense of this all, Gypsy says, what was in Nick's brain? I don't know for sure, but it felt like I was being used to help him live out this fantasy as if he was playing around with characters that he created in his mind or in a video game. And some of them were evil killers, and maybe it might be fun for him to play around with the darker side of life. We were using each other. Yeah, but you used him way worse, I would say. And some would argue that you took advantage of him. Nick is on the autism spectrum, grew up in special education classes, and has the IQ of 82 and the functionality equivalent of that of a 10-year-old. Thoughts on these revelations? I wonder if Gypsy's that kinky still with Ken. Definitely not with Ryan. Thoughts? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments section.